guys, I'm going to start with Gil first. Gil, how are you preparing for the market slowdown?
Well, market slowdown. Well, you can never prepare for it. Fortunately, really, where we are is we're in a very good position. The Porsche Design Tower is ready to be delivered in December. Where we are with the Residence by Armani Casa project, we are over 65% sold, almost 70% sold, and we're under construction. So we don't have too much inventory to let go over the next couple of years until the Armani Tower will be ready. We have less than 100 units to sell, and we have about 30 months to go. So at 3 units per month, even with a slowdown, we're not at all excited about or nervous about anything else. The reality is, you're talking about developers changing things or changing their way to do business when they see the market slowing down. We took a different philosophy. We said, let's make something so spectacular from the onset that we don't need to add anything to it, later on. And so our buildings really, we're very proud of how they came out. So
you feel like you're in a good place?
We're in a very good place. I mean, and that's exactly why we're not exactly nervous. I'm also partners with JP on Hyde Midtown. And that's another project that's 80-something% sold. So we're all in a good spot right now. I think we're not looking to start anything new today, but going forward we're pretty good.
You're also in a unique position is that you own a lot of the land as well from a long time ago. So
we own land. We have income-producing property on the land, so we can afford to sit and wait.
Edgardo, how do you feel?
I feel similar to Gil in the sense that we are also in a great position. J Signature. Our development is topping off tomorrow. It's 90+% sold. And all the 4 projects that we are in the development, the Ritz-Carlton in Sunny Isles, J Signature, Auberge, Fort Lauderdale, and Hyde Resort in Hollywood, they're all under construction, all either 100% sold or very significantly sold, all with construction loans. So the key component today is discipline. If you don't start something that you shouldn't start at the wrong time, I think that the market is still, even though we always compare it to the best market ever, the market is still very strong today. I mean, I really...
You really feel the market is very strong today?
Well, in comparative terms with 2 years ago, of course, no. But if you think that, for instance, at the Ritz-Carlton in September, we sold $38 million, I think that that's a pretty strong sign of a market. The credibility is a very big factor today. I mean, having the building under construction, having the construction loan, having all the capital structure in place is very, very positive for the market.
Well, let me go to Shahab. Shahab, you have a project that's going to come out of the ground. Do you feel that, how are you preparing for that project? That's a very large project you're doing with Rafael Vignoli, a great architect.
We actually have a project that we launched and another project that we will be launching. And going back to the comment you made about the market being tough for development. And development,
can you speak right
yeah,
into the
development as a whole is tough. I don't think anybody here would say it's easy to develop. And when we decided on branching out of New York and focusing on Miami, and this was in 2013, where everybody was again talking about how Miami's not going to come back. We had our reasons for believing in Miami. Our gold standard in Miami in particular has been buy land early, build an inventory, be all cash, whether it's an acquisition or pre-dev. And it's a discipline that Edgardo talked about, is do not go in and put yourself in a position where the project may be well conceived, but the timing will bury you. So we feel very comfortable with where we are positioned. Additionally, within broader markets or subsets of markets, which, even though they're impacted by the larger picture, behave differently in specifics to the type of project or location. We're very passionate about the river. I know Swire and the work that they've done from my years in Asia and from their work in Hong Kong, and that was one of the motivating factors for us to come here. I've lived in cities with rivers. I've developed in cities with rivers. So we're very excited about the river. We think, regardless of what this market does, the future for Miami is extremely bright.
Shahab, let me just ask you again. Like, how are you going to prepare for when the market actually really begins to slow down and you still don't have the project out of the ground? How are you guys preparing for that?
We've had very strong reservations, and we're about to convert into contract. So perhaps I can give you a better answer once we see the proof's in the pudding and see what our conversion rates are. But in terms of preparation is have a product that's best in class, second to none, be in areas that we believe in, and don't have debt. And when you don't have debt, you're cash, and we have patient capital and a unique product. We're optimistic, and so far our reservations are supporting that. We're optimistic to the point where we're actually launching another tower in the next month that you'll be hearing about, and it's by Enrique Norton, another very well-known architect. So we're very bullish, and I am not as young as I look. So I've been through these cycles in New York, in Thailand, in New York numerous times, and there's a Farsi saying that says real estate doesn't die, it sleeps. And if you are solid with your financing and your capital, you go through these markets. Miami's not going anywhere. The U.S. is not going anywhere. I think it's the best place to live in the world. I'm a first-generation immigrant here. I think it's the best place to be. I love Miami. It's one of the best places in the U.S. and in the world to be. It's not going anywhere. So you just weather it out. You time it out.
I remember after the 2007, 2008, people were actually thinking that the sun was going to disappear in Miami. And, it came back, with great velocity. And it came back. The people who managed to hold through that period, they did extremely well. So
we learned one thing. We said there's no such thing as distressed properties, just distressed sellers.
distressed sellers, right?
That's the difference.
Jean-Paul, you guys obviously are the king of development here in Miami. You guys have changed some strategy recently. You've canceled the auberge. You've increased commissions to 10%. You're doing things like that to increase, to get activity going, I'm guessing. How is that working out for you guys?
Well, first, we haven't canceled auberge. What we've done is sort of delayed construction due to the slow reservation.
So the auberge is not canceled?
No, we're still open. We're still taking reservations. It's just taking longer than what we originally had thought.
Can you speak right into the mic?
So were you able to hear me what I was saying before? And other tools that we've used in projects that are 90% sold with the last remaining 10% or even less, where we have the financing, we have all the deposits we need to build it, we figured a way to maybe tap into a local market to increase the velocity of sales is to reduce the restriction of the deposit just for the remaining 10%, 5% to increase velocity, and it's worked pretty well. In addition, on top of that, we figured who brings us all the buyers, and most of the buyers are coming from brokers, so how do we incentivize those brokers to come to our projects instead of others? And again, on just very few projects, we raise the commissions to, again, increase the awareness and attractiveness of bringing buyers to our buildings.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to go down the line here. Shahab, I'll start with you. These guys are bringing, they're dealing with buyers. Obviously, they're on the front lines. Their buyers are seeing the headlines. They're seeing the reports that are out there. And people are a bit more patient, right? They're not rushing to jump. They're not thinking that they're going to lose out on any sort of a deal. What advice would you give these guys, as far as selling brokers, as what they can tell their buyers right now? Shahab, I'll start with you.
Look, there's a general comment that I think all of us would give them. And there's a specific comment that I can speak specifically to our project. And one of the guiding principles for us when we came down to Miami was, is it possible to build a type of building which would be equally at home in New York or Shanghai or London and sell it in Miami? Is it possible to bring somebody of Rafael Viñoly's caliber and not have him on the beach, have him on the Miami River, where at the time was thought not the place to bring a star architect? And is it possible to create a unique product that is world-class and still be within the price band of what is acceptable in these markets? So what I have continuously said, and I'm on record as saying it, is the best advice to me to any broker is understand the product that you're selling. There's a school of thought that purchasing should be based on just how expensive or how cheap something is. There's another school of thought where if it's luxury, there should be no price point. It's an Hermes Kelly bag, and it doesn't matter what it costs. And then there's our school of thought that there's a median between giving absolute quality while being somewhat conscientious of the price points towards your buyers. So I would tell brokers, be selective in the projects you go to. Look at who the developer is, look at who the team is, the architect, the designer, the whole lineup, and study that project, because when you study the projects and know the projects, any of our projects, you're much better positioned to educate your buyer and make them understand why Miami still is the best value proposition in the first world. You look, I mean, forget places like London, Paris, New York. You even look at Latin America, some other secondary markets. It continuously amazes me what a value proposition New York is. I'm sure most of the people in this room are familiar with 432 Park Avenue. I happen to love the building. Raphael designed it. And you look at what you have to pay to live at 432 Park Avenue. And here's the same architect designing a building which, you know, talking my own book, I think it's even more beautiful, with greater amenities that are afforded by the climate here. And you can buy from us at 1/8 the price, fully finished, 1/8 the price. So if brokers take the time to understand this and communicate this to their buyers, whether it's domestically or internationally, combined with what a great city Miami is, that would be my advice.
You have to be a real big Rafael Vinoli fan to not buy in New York and come down to Miami to buy, right?
You can buy in both places.
Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or for a few bucks more, you can get both, it sounds like.
That's right. Inigo?
So the question,
The question is, what advice would you give the brokers out there who have reluctant buyers in the Miami market right now?
well, first, I think the market is, you know, the press over-exaggerates it when it's good and over-exaggerates it when it's bad. I think the market is not nearly as bad as people think. I mean, for example, one of our projects was, you know, the one that we're almost out of inventory in most of our products, but on one of them we just got over
Can you
80%.
speak right into the mic?
Yeah. In one of them, we're just a little bit above 80%. We sold 9 units last month. So the market is slower, but it's not dead by any means. I think for the brokers, what's important is now you can choose the products that you want. You don't have to rush into them, you know, and make sure that the project is getting built. And that they're paying commissions and that your client is going to get what he expects at the end. I think that's very important in a climate like this because since velocity is down, the most dangerous is, you know, product that is not under construction or well into construction. I mean, it's, you know, that's, I think that's, you know, but what's good is that the ones that, a lot of projects that are under construction are sold. So the ones that have some inventory, we're still getting velocity because they don't have that many choices today.
So what is the advice then? That, you know, Shahab's is to be selective in the projects that you pick and take your buyers to. What is the advice that you have for these people in terms of what they can tell their buyers? The market is not dead, but it's active. But what other advice would you have?
You know, pick products that are getting built, that have good prices, good offering, you know, and I think that's the best advice right now.
Gil?
So if you're a broker today, your goal is to sell. I would use all the press and everything you have to help you to kind of create the feeling of what's now going to be a buyer's market. And smart money in buyer's markets, you know, they buy. I remember, unfortunately, I'd love to forget, but I remember 2010 was a buyer's market, and we were giving away product at below replacement cost. So we, you know, the sales pitch continues to evolve throughout the process of the project. In our case right now at Porsche Design, our new sales pitch to the buyers, and I recommend every one of you brokers in this room should use a sales pitch, that the best time to buy is in the beginning and the end of a project. As we all know, when a project comes to an end, you always have buyers with situations who changed. Maybe somebody who's willing to lose a deposit. Maybe somebody who's willing to pass that savings onto the next buyer. So the best time to buy is the beginning and the end of the project, and only, of course, on the better projects as you see them getting closer to completion. But you guys as brokers, everybody in this room should be using all this information of the market's getting soft, et cetera, to fuel your clients to come in and make a strong deal and try and buy as much as they can today. Because if anybody remembers, what you bought in 2010 has gone up by 2 or 3 times.
So unless you're planning to change careers, you got to still sell and make bread. So, you know, use the information that you have to still continue to sell. Edgardo, what advice do you have?
My advice would be concentrate on fortune projects because they are. But all kidding aside, the reality is during a long time in the market, we were spoiled in many ways, that it was more almost like taking orders rather than selling. And now we really have to work hard at selling. But the buyers, the real buyers, the smart buyers are still there. The markets, even though are slower, Latin American continues to be strong. I see the mood and the optimism in Argentina and in Brazil changing already. So the fact that they're not buying today, the urgency has gone out of the buyer.
Changing
that's for
in
sure.
terms of it's getting more vibrant?
It's getting much, much better. I mean, the optimism both in Argentina and Brazil is significantly better than was 6 months ago. And you can see it, you can perceive it. Also, even the rate of exchange in Brazil went from 4 reales to the dollar to 320 today. So it's significant improvements that are going to bring that market back. You can't just sit down and wait. You have to go and get additional markets. We are working, we went to Turkey, we're exploring China. The alliance with Town on New York is really working. I mean, we just recently, one broker sold 3 units for more than 15 million for us. So thank you, Andrew, for that. But really, the key is continue to work hard. I mean, it's not coming as easy as it was before, that's for sure.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to what Edgardo said, but first I want to hear Jean-Paul.
I think one of the biggest things is what everybody said I agree with, but I go back to what Karmely said was that you really need to educate the buyer that Miami still is an extremely good value proposition. I mean, when you compare Miami in Brickell at $550, $600, $700 a foot, the same product in New York, Chicago, LA is at least north of $2,500, $3,000 a foot. And also in Turkey, where we're getting a lot of buyers. We did a trip there, and when you see the product of the same quality, if not our stuff is better quality, they're selling for over $1,500, $1,600 a foot on gross square footage. So when you take actually the net, it's even higher. So I think it's really educating the buyers that Miami's still a very attractive market. It's a very young city still, and it's still growing rapidly. And there's a lot to be changed.
Well, how do you create urgency when the buyer's like, well, I understand Miami is a great city, and that's why I'm looking, but why should I buy now? Why shouldn't I rent now and buy a year from now?
Well, we're fortunate that we don't have that many units left to sell. Most of our projects are at least 80% sold if we're under construction. So the urgency is that there's really limited inventory, right? For instance, in SLS Lux, we have 9 penthouse units. So it's not like those are going to stay there all day. So the fact that we don't have hundreds of units still left to sell, I think, at least for us, creates sort of that urgency that these aren't going to be here forever.
All right. I feel like for a very long time, Miami has been relying on the South American market. And they've sort of, while the South American market has been coming up here, these guys have been more active going down there. But I don't think there's that much of an effort made by the developers here to reach out to other channels outside of South America. Most of the events and showcases that I see a lot of developers participating in is Brazil and Mexico and places like that. But obviously, the number one foreign investors in the U.S. market are the Chinese, and number 2 is the Canadians. And now you're seeing places like Turkey look into these areas. What are you guys doing to create new channels of buyers from places outside of South America? Yesterday, I was talking to a broker who said that, I guess Paramount World Center, they were saying that there's after the Brazilians, the second, most active buyers in that project were the Chinese. But that's because that development actually made the effort to go to China in the last year 6 times and to connect with those buyers. And they're getting those Chinese buyers, even though there is no straight flights. What are you guys doing to create new channels of buyers for yourselves?
We've gone to China probably a handful of times. The problem is that what we've noticed about the Chinese buyer is that it's more of a creature of habit. So, like, they're used to New York and they buy New York a lot. They're used to LA. They are just starting to get acquainted with Miami, and they take a while to make decisions. It's not, the Latin buyer is just so used to Miami. They have all types of family, friends that live here. The Chinese, that's not the case. So I think that market is definitely they're going to start buying in Miami, but it's a slower moving organism than what people think. And plus, there's no direct flight, so that is also a negative. But from our experience there, it's a slow sale. It's a difficult sale. A lot of interest, but when it comes sign the contracts and the check, that takes a little longer.
So I want to add to that because I've experienced the same thing he has. I lived in Thailand for a number of years, and we had offices in Singapore and Hong Kong, and I am back and forth there. And the Chinese are they have a herd mentality, and we're kind of at that. I think we're kind of that tipping point where you're going to start getting an acceleration of buying, and they very much do move in herds, and if a group is buying, the others will buy. The Chinese are also very clever at value comparisons, as most human beings are. And human beings, I don't think, are generally good at absolute value analysis, but on comparisons, people tend to be clever. And the message of starting to compare the markets that Inigo mentioned, where they like buying in, and then seeing what they get for the same amount of money in Miami, is really resonating. And one of the ways, in particular with our project that we're pursuing, that is that one of our design life amenity partners is Adrian Zecca, who's the founder of GHM and Amman. He's a great old friend of mine, and we've had a lot of traction because of his reputation in China with interest in our project. But between what Swire has done and between what Inigo mentioned and the value analysis, I am absolutely convinced that within the next 2 years, you're going to see an exponential growth of Chinese presence in this market.
Gil?
To be perfectly honest, opening up new markets is absolutely extremely expensive. And so we're not exactly the ones who are there opening new markets. I look to my good friend over here who's got the machine plus 40 or 50 projects that he's selling right now.
But Gil, that's the price of doing business, right? I mean,
well, but you see, but there's doing business and there's doing business intelligently. I can let these boys over here spend a fortune, and then once these people come to Miami, they will find me. I know that. They will absolutely
so you're
find me.
piggybacking on these guys.
That's the easiest way to do it. I mean,
that's a great comment because it's true. It doesn't. But it doesn't take a trip or a handful of trips in any market to be successful at it. It's like I was saying before with the effort on an individual basis. It's the same thing with the corporate or with the development. I mean, we've been in Latin America for 30 years. I mean, obviously now it sounds relatively easy to go back to Latin America and promote. But if you want a new market, you have to create new alliances. You have to foster that market, educate that broker or people there. And then, yes, customers bring customers. And definitely you get the benefits of the effort. But going to China or Turkey for a trip, it might generate 1 or 2 sales, but it doesn't really generate the affluence of the market. You have to continue to work that market, try to obviously first identify what potential markets are, and then work at getting that. And it's very difficult on an individual project basis. That's, I guess, why together we're very successful in the sense that you have to have synergies. You have to be able to spend that money and take a number of projects and then a variety of products in order to be able to offer to those new markets.
Right, but it's a matter of also going to those markets and educating them. We did a show last year in China, and there was a lot of Miami projects that came with us, and the Chinese who were walking through there, they were like, this is incredible. Where is this? This is in the United States? And we're like, it's Miami, right? And they just were not familiar with it. So I guess there's a matter of like educating the other market on it, on your projects and on the city.
But you can do 2 types of jobs: educating, and they're going to pat you in the back because you're a great professor, or you want to sell. I mean, if you want to sell, you not only need to educate, but you also need to make alliances and continue doing the follow-up. I mean, going to a trip and coming back and waiting for them to come is very difficult. You have to follow up, and you have to continue to be in the presence of their potential buyers.
And as a joke, I mean, there's no financial aid for this education. However, seriously speaking, though, we should be looking to the local government here to help us out and help promote Miami in general, because we all win from it. The city wins from it. A higher tax base, higher people, more people spending money in there, higher sales tax, etc. So we should be looking to our city leaders to really put a lot of effort to go help us open up these new markets.
Yeah, I agree. Jean-Paul?
Thank you.
No, I also think the biggest thing is the direct flight is a big issue, right? I mean, I've been to Shanghai twice now, and to get there it's you know, here to New York, then New York there if you're lucky. So I think that's number one. Number two is we've created a partnership or an alliance, if you want to call it, with a group out of Shanghai that has 4,000 brokers, and it's resulted in probably 10 sales. They've come here, we've shown them the projects, we've been there, we've done, you know, events, promotions, and like Edgardo says, you almost need to create your own team there that is there every day, that is promoting every day and teaching these people about Miami, the projects, why it's a good place to invest. So it really requires a lot of time and a lot of money to see the real effect that you want.
Right. So, but I'm saying if the market is slowing here, it makes sense to go out and grab these guys and bring them in. But I agree with the straight flight. I mean, there's no reason why Dallas should get more of the Chinese money that's coming here just because they have straight flights to Beijing and Shanghai, and Miami isn't. Because I've been to both cities and I prefer Miami. But in terms of as you know, as people are rethinking what kind of developments they should do you guys foresee more boutique developments coming on and not, you know, these projects with like 500 units and 400 units? Do you see more boutique projects coming online?
I do, because they're easier to get off the ground. I mean, if you've got a 10 or 15 unit product and you've got, you know 5 or 6 buyers that'll buy in it, you're there. If you're taking out a 400 unit product, you don't know 200 buyers.
And you guys also do financing as well, correct? You guys also do financing as well?
Financing
For your own projects?
For our own projects, we don't do financing. For the buyers, sometimes we will if they need it, yes.
Would anybody here offer financing for buyers if they needed it?
That's one of the options we've looked at and considered. And to your point that markets are fluid, you know, the old saying that the only constant is change. So clearly, the same discussions we're having up here, we have internally with our teams. And again, part of having strong patient capital and having no debt is the ability at times to help our buyers buy from us by holding some paper. So really, you want to allow yourself maximum flexibility and look at those options. I want to go back to your point about boutique, by the way, if I may. And I don't necessarily believe the definition of boutique is small, because boutique can also come to mean how differentiated you are or what level of your specific product in terms of design, in terms of execution, in terms of amenities you're producing. And I really believe the way forward, and this is not just in Miami, it's in markets worldwide, is that with every 5-6 years, there's a new expected level of luxury. And what was luxury a generation ago is almost unexpected, is a baseline now. And I think going forward in these markets, increased competition, a worldwide more sophisticated buyer, it's very, very key to take your time and try to differentiate and value add as much as you possibly can. So in a sense, regardless of the size of the project, unless you're going for just a basic price point, a moving product on price, you have to be boutique in terms of execution and crafting.
Gil, you were going to comment?
With respect to boutique buildings, I mean, that's what adds the danger to the market. I mean, when you get these boutique buildings, there's a low barrier of entry, meaning guys like us probably wouldn't touch the stuff because it's too small. So what happens is you wind up having these dentists turned developers who try and put these projects together. And it's funny, but it's true. It happened in the last go-around. And some weren't even as smart as dentists. So, and you see these projects that are then, like you see the 4 to 8 to 10 unit buildings. It's not even on our radar. We look at it as it's the same headache to build one of our monstrous towers as it is to build a single family home. So put your effort into something that that gets off. But what happens is you're going to get these guys who are less experienced, think that they're going to sell for the same $1,000 plus a square foot, and then and hopefully it works out. as a buyer, I would be, precautious in buying something like that until it's absolutely ready.
I think that there are some sub-markets where smaller projects could be successful. Like if you pick Coconut Grove and you do a very creative type of a small, it's usually focusing on people that live in the area and that like to move for whatever reason, so something newer and something more creative. Same thing with some of the smaller sites in Miami Beach that potentially could be successful on a very private, very small scale. The problem with smaller projects is that obviously you don't have the critical mass in order to spend, in order to be able to get those customers to come by. And also a lot of the customers, especially the ones that are buying second homes, are looking for amenitized projects and service and all of the things that the great projects that we're building provide. So it's very difficult to compete with that. But there are some small segments that small projects, especially on a relatively slow market when you're looking for more local buyers, could be successful.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about boutique projects, then you won't have projects popping up in the heart of Brickell and Edgewater on the water and Midtown. You got to go to the smaller submarkets, maybe South Beach, small little site on the sand. But
so let me, you see all these towers going up, and people always tell me it's mostly international buyers. Does it make sense to build for Floridians, people who live domestic here? Because most of the people I know can't just plop down $500,000 for 50% down payment. I know all of you guys.
Find some new friends.
Buy some more friends. But does it make sense to be able to take less money down, less of a down payment, so that local people can buy into new developments?
It's very hard to get construction financing that way. So construction financing.
You're really isolating the market. You're isolating the local market. These are the people who live here, but they sort of look at these towers as pieces of art because most of them can't afford to live in them.
But they'll get the resales off of the Latin Americans that can sell, that will later sell. That's the good thing about the market. But for developers to be able to build these with small deposits, it's virtually impossible because we won't get the construction financing, and plus you won't want to take the risk. We're basically in a business this cycle that was a low risk business if you got your project off the ground because you were mostly financed by buyer deposits. Mm-hmm. It was, it's hard for us to go wrong. Not like last cycle, we were financed by banks, and that's why things went wrong so fast.
Amir, he said I'm sorry. You said isolating the towers, the market. What's happening in Miami is actually protecting the market. One of the really key drivers for us to come down to Miami from New York, and I can speak specifically to New York experience, is that besides the value proposition where any project even today, I'm looking at New York, I'm looking to spend anywhere between $850 to $1,200 a net sellable square foot. Our bases on our tower on the river is $38 net sellable square foot. So you can't argue with that. And then the fact that despite what projects get announced, what is getting built in this market, as Inigo put, is what's sold. So despite all the hype of Chicken Little, the sky's falling, this is a very safe market. There can be ads about projects. It's not coming out of the ground. You're not going to be, because of what's happened with this, you're not going to be stuck in a city with Asian-style 80 skyscrapers, half-finished, looking like a sci-fi set. And it's been a wonderful regulator to this market, and it helps everybody in this local economy on the long term. So it's for us, we view it as an extreme positive.
Gil, you were going to?
Part of what I touched on before about the beginning and the end, and what JP also mentioned, is that it's for the local market here at the final hours of the project. We will be willing to take less deposits if that's what requires to sell to a local. Today, for instance, if somebody came in to buy something at Porsche Design Tower, I'm closing in a month and a half. So I'll take a 10% deposit. It doesn't really matter to me. If the guy doesn't close, I got 10% for nothing. But that's not even the point. The point is before we needed the money to show to banks for deposits, and once these projects get going, you don't, and then you can open to the local market. The other school of thought is, like you mentioned, your friend doesn't have $500,000 to put down. But and again, towards the end of the project, that $500,000 would have been out for 3 years, versus today he can put $300,000 down, because that's really the delta. You're talking that 20%. and he doesn't have to wait too long. So really, the locals who are here, who are really with their finger on the market and understanding what's going on, they can see where the opportunity lies. And I believe there is a strong market here for locals. Yeah, maybe the beach has been priced out, or it's become very expensive. But it's very similar to what happened in Manhattan. I mean, you look at Manhattan; it's an island of millionaires, and if you can't afford it, you go to Brooklyn and every place else. So that's where that's the way you got to look at the difference between the beach and versus the rest of Miami.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that there's no thinking of marketing to the local market. You're still building and marketing.
We'd love for them to come and buy. We market to the world. Whoever wants to buy, they can buy.
Sure.
A local buyer doesn't make a decision to move 3 or 4 years ahead of time.
My
so
point.
it usually, it naturally comes at the end of the project when it's between 6 months and a year away. So at that time, potentially, if you have a solid local buyer, you can relax the structure and the deposits, like Gil was saying. So I think that it's a question of appealing to the local buyer. Typically uses one's houses, or it's less the condo luxury. It's somewhat less appealing to the local buyer in many cases. But when they come at the end of the project. I mean, at the end of the construction cycle. No?
Right. All right. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'll go to the audience. So if they can. Raise your hands if you're interested in asking a question. I think we have one here, so if you could bring him a microphone, that would be great. In terms of land prices, are you seeing land prices come down much, JP?
Not yet. We have not seen, especially in the urban core, we have not seen land prices come down. We've seen some softening in the suburban markets in Orlando, because we also have a very big rental division.
Yeah.
And lately, we've been able to work with sellers and negotiate a lot better deals.
But you guys are active. You're actually looking for land still.
Oh, yeah. We're correct. Yes.
Is it safe to say that for everyone on stage? You guys are actively looking for land?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have a brokerage community. I encourage you, if you have anything to sell in CBD core, don't go to Gil, come to me.
I close cash.
Same.
And what about in terms of construction costs? Has that started to soften at all, or?
Yes.
Construction costs
have softened, definitely. You have a lot more competition, and you're actually from subs, so you have a lot more bids. And the last construction job that we bought, which was about 6 or 7 months ago, maybe not. It was maybe like 4 or 5 months ago. We actually were under budget, and that's the first time we've seen that in the last 4 years.
In those cases where you have construction costs come down and land prices come down, would you adjust your pro forma?
Yes, we would definitely adjust our pro forma.
So we're going to hold you to that then.
in new developments, and the ones that we have right now.
He would turn his profit line higher. That's all he does.
I don't think that the land prices are going to come down any significant way. First, because of the scarcity of it to begin with, but in addition to it, it's very, very low leverage, if any at all. Before, in the past cycle, land was leveraged at 60-70%. Now it's almost non-existent, and the ones that have good pieces of land are not letting it go. I mean, and they learned from the past cycle that land eventually becomes very, very valuable again. So it's very difficult to foresee. On the construction costs, it's really, you can see now significant planning from big contractors into trying to get their books filled again. And we can see some, the question is, was it too high when they were charging us anything they wanted with the big boom, or now they have come down significantly? I think that it's a great sign for the market that the construction costs are adjusting to the reality today.
I want to thank our panelists, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And that's it.